Okay, so good morning
Ay,
once again,
mali,
class.
mali.
Okay, thank you for attending our morning session for Advanced Database Administration. So, to discuss the database memory management and rebuild support, please let us all welcome Miss Ginger Nepomuceno. Go ahead, madam.
Good morning, Doc. Good morning, classmates. So, for our session today, our focus would be database memory management and rebuild support. This is an output for our MSIT class, Advanced Database Administration. Patay, ayaw umandar. Yon. So, first of all, what is memory in the context of IT? It's important for us to understand first what is the memory component in the language of information technology. So, for IT, memory refers to a device that is used to store information for immediate use in a computer or a computer hardware device. It typically refers to a semiconductor memory or an MOS, metal oxide semiconductor, where data is stored within the MOS memory cells or on the silicon integrated circuit chip. If you notice, yung logo na ginamit ko is a sample of a memory. So that's the random access memory card. So just to be able to visualize what memory is for information technology. The term memory is often synonymous with storage. The computer memory operates at a high speed. For example, as mentioned, RAM, random access memory. It is used as a distinction from storage that provides slow to access information but offers higher capacities. So the higher RAM you have, the higher capacity you get. If needed, contents of the computer memory can be transferred to a secondary storage. A very common way of doing this is through what we will be discussing today, which is memory management, and it's also called virtual memory. In an archaic synonym, it is memory is also used to is synonymous with store or of course storage. So in essence, memory is all about storage. All right, moving on to the next. Right. So what is memory management? Memory management is actually a process. It's a process of controlling and coordinating computer memory, assigning portions called blocks to various running programs, and the main objective is to provide an overall system performance, an optimized system performance. Memory management resides in in the hardware, so the OS and in the programs and applications. So three key components on hardware: OS, programs, and applications. Next, memory management is a form of resource management applied to computer memory. The essential requirement of memory management is to provide ways to dynamically allocate. So the keyword here is allocate specific portions of memory to programs at their request and free it to reuse when no longer needed. Memory management is a form of resource management applied to a computer memory. The essential requirement of memory management is to provide ways to dynamically allocate portions of memory to programs at their request and free it to reuse when no longer needed. This is critical to any advanced computer system where there are more than a single process might be underway at any time. There are several methods that have been devised to increase the effectiveness of memory management. First is the virtual memory. The virtual memory system separates the memory address used by a process from actual physical address, allowing separation of processes and increasing the size of virtual address space beyond the available amount of the RAM using paging and swapping to secondary storage. The quality of the virtual memory manager can have an extensive effect on an overall system performance. So actually, if you can see here, what memory management is telling us is it manages resources for our computer memory, and the overall objective is really to provide an optimized overall system performance. Now, going more a bit technical, the memory structure must be managed through the system global area. So we will often hear SGA and the instance program global area, which we coined as PGA. In the context of Oracle, Oracle database supports various memory management methods, which are chosen by initialization parameter settings. So there are two ways to there are two major ways on how to manage memory. First is automatic, and then the second one is manual. So I'll be discussing automatic first in the context of Oracle. Oracle database can manage the SGA memory and the PGA memory instance automatically. What you need to do is you designate the total memory size to be used by the instance, and the Oracle database dynamically exchanges memory between the SGA and the PGA. This capability is actually referred as the automatic memory management. So swapping or between um, SGA and PGA is how automatic memory management works. With this memory management, the database also dynamically tunes the sizes of the SGA to the PGA. Oracle recommends automatic memory management for databases, specifically for where the total size of the SGA and the PGA is less than or equal to 4 gigabytes. Moving on to next. So the next key thing here is the manual memory management. If you prefer to exercise more direct control over the sizes of our individual memory components, you can actually disable automatic memory management and configure the database via a manual approach. There are different methods available for manual memory management. Some with a degree of automation. The methods therefore vary in the amount of effort and knowledge required by the DBA. So these are the following examples. Automatic shared memory management manual, automatic PGA, and a manual PGA. So um, in here it's showing us that although it can be done manually, but it can also be a hybrid of a manual and automatic, depending on the capacity of the SGA and the PGA. Next. Um, in the interest of time, 8:11, kaya pa. All right. Dynamic memory allocation. So another method is via the dynamic memory allocation. The task of fulfilling an allocation request consists of locating a block of unused memory within a sufficient size. Memory requests are satisfied by allocating portions from a large pool of memory called heap or free store. And then at any given time, some parts of the heap are in use, while some are free or unused and thus available for future allocations. Several issues complicate the implementation, such as external fragmentation, which arises when there are many small gaps between allocated memory blocks, which invalidates their use for an allocation request. The allocator's metadata can also inflate the size of individual of small allocations. This is often managed by chunking or partitioning. The memory management must track outstanding allocations to ensure that they do not overlap, that is, and that no memory is ever lost. So the dynamic memory allocation is making sure that you maximize the use of memory, and you know which ones are unused, which ones are used, and how you can distribute this memory through the help of the metadata, one of which is through chunking or partitioning. Another key component of a dynamic memory allocation is efficiency. So the specific dynamic memory allocation algorithm implemented can impact performance significantly. So there's a study as mentioned here. The lowest average instruction path length required to allocate a single memory slot was 52. Well, this was at the time that the material was written. And the study was conducted in 1994 by Digital Equipment Corporation, which illustrates the overheads involved for a variety of allocators. So allocators, in the context naman of distributed processing management, is distributing. For memory is allocating. So perhaps that's how we how I can use an analogy between a distributed processing and a memory management. Next, implementation. There are several ways of implementation that will be discussed here. So I'll get started with fixed size blocks allocation. So first and foremost, since the precise location of the allocation is not known in advance, the memory is accessed indirectly, usually through a pointer reference. The specific algorithm used to organize the memory area and the allocate chunks is interlinked with the kernel. So kernel is like layers and may use any of the following methods. First, the fixed size blocks allocation. The fixed size blocks allocation is also called memory pool allocation. It uses a free list of fixed size blocks of memory, usually of the same size. This works well for simple embedded systems when there is no large objects that needs to be allocated. But this suffers from fragmentation, especially with long memory addresses. However, due to the significantly reduced overhead, this method can substantially improve performance for objects that need frequent allocation and deallocation. And this is the commonly used in video games. Ayan na ang aking noise background. Second, body blocks. In this system, the memory is allocated into several pools of memory instead of just one, where each pool represents blocks of memory of a certain power of 2 in size or blocks of some other convenient size progression. All blocks of a particular size are kept in a sorted linked list or tree, and all new blocks that are formed during the allocation are added to the respective memory pools for later use. So it's like queuing. The concept is like queuing. If a smaller size is requested than is available, the smallest available size is selected and then will be split. One of the resulting parts is selected and the process repeats until the request is complete. When a block is allocated, the allocator will start with the smallest sufficiently large block to avoid needlessly block breaking blocks. When a block is freed, it is compared to its body, and if they are both free, they are combined and placed in a correspondingly larger size body block list. So the keywords here is really putting it into a queue via a linked list or tree. Next, slab allocation. For slab allocation, this mechanism pre-allocates. So the key word here is pre-allocate. So if body block is queuing it via a tree concept, this slab allocation is pre-allocating memory chunks suitable to fit objects of a certain type or size. These chunks are called um, cache, and the allocator only has to keep track of a list of free cache slots. Constructing an object will use any of these free cache slots, and destructing an object that will add a slot back to the free cache slot list. This technique alleviates memory fragmentation and is efficient as there is no need to search for a suitable portion of memory as any open slot will suffice. So the caching technique, slab allocation pala yan. Move next. Stack allocation. Now for Unix and Microsoft, they implement it called it's called Alloca for dynamically allocating stack memory in a similar to the heap-based malloc. A compiler typically translated to the inline instructions manipulating the stack pointer. Although there is no need of manually freeing memory allocated this way, as it is automatically freed when the function is called alloca or alloca, where there exists a risk of overflow. And since alloca is an ad hoc expansion, which is seen in many systems but is never in POSIX or the C, its behavior in case of a stack overflow is undefined. A safer version is of an alloca is called underscore MALLOCA, which reports errors exist, and this exists in Microsoft. It requires the use of underscore free a dot gnulib newlib provides an equivalent interface, albeit instead of throwing this exception on an overflow, it delegates malloc when an over large size is detected. A similar feature can be emulated using manual accounting and size checking, such as the uses of Alloca account in GLI glibc. For stack allocation, the keywords here are alloca and malloca, MALLOCA. But this is particularly for Unix and Microsoft Windows. So two last items to discuss: automatic variables and garbage collection. So in many programming language implementations, all variables declared within a procedure are local to that function. The runtime environment for the program automatically allocates memory for these variables on various execution entry to the procedure and automatically releases the memory. So it automatically releases the memory when the procedure is exited. So when you exit from a program, memory is also released. Special declarations may allow local variables to retain values between invocations of the procedure or may allow local variables to be accessed by other procedures. The automatic allocation of local variables make recursion possible to a depth limited by available memory. Recursion, recursive, something repetitive or within a loop. Last for memory management is garbage collection. Garbage collection is a strategy for automatically detecting memory allocated to objects that are no longer used in a program and then returning that allocated memory to a pool of memory allocation. So it's like freeing up memory and putting it as part of an available or freed up memory allocation. This method is in contrast to manual memory management, where a programmer explicitly codes memory requests and releases the memory in the program, while the automatic garbage has the advantages of reducing programmer workload and preventing certain kinds of memory allocation bugs Garbage collection does require memory resources of its own and can actually compete with the application program for processor time. Now, I'm moving to the rebuilding system databases. So what is rebuild system databases? The system databases must be rebuilt to fix corruption problems in the master or to modify the default server's level collation. So rebuilding is really for these two goals or objectives: to fix corrupted files or to modify the default server level collation. Rebuilding a database is the process of restoring. So rebuilding is synonymous with restoring a database or a subset of it using a set of restore operations. The ability this is it has the ability to rebuild a database from a table space backup images means that you no longer have to take as many full database backups. So this is in comparison between the table backup and a full database backup. As databases grow in size, opportunities for taking a full database backup are becoming limited. With the table space backup as an alternative, you no longer need to take full database backups as frequently. Instead, you can take more frequent stable space backups and plan to use them along with log files in case of a disaster. In our company, we normally have daily database backups and off-peak hours, and we we track we track errors during the backup if there's a failed backup or a component of it via the log files. Other information that was worth sharing. In a recovery solution, if you need to bring a subset of table spaces online faster than others, you can use rebuild to accomplish this. The ability to bring only a subset of table spaces online is especially used in a test and a production environment. Rebuilding a database involves a series of potentially many restore operations. A rebuild operation can use a database image, a table space image, or even both. It can use full backups, incremental backups, and even both. The initial restore operation restores the target image, which defines the structure of the database that can be restored. For recoverable databases, rebuilding allows you to build a database that is connected and that contains the subject of table spaces where you need to have online while keeping table spaces that can be recovered at a later time. This time offline. So, two more slides, classmates. What are the limitations and restrictions of rebuilding a database? When the master or the model or the temp DB are rebuilt, the databases are dropped and recreated to its original location. If a new collation is specified in the rebuild statement, the system databases are created using that collation setting. Any user modifications to these databases are lost. For example, you may have user-defined objects in the master databases, scheduled jobs in the MSDB, or changes to the default database settings in the model database. So the limitation is um, once it's dropped or recreated back to its original location, any hard work that the programmer did prior to the dropping or recreation, wala na. Kaputs. It's done. So, in terms of prerequisites, what are the prerequisites of rebuilding the database? So, these are the steps. The recommended steps. First, record all server-wide configuration values. Next, record all hotfixes applied to the instance of the server and the current collation. You must then reapply these hot fixes after rebuilding the system databases. So essentially, once cleaned up, what you need to do is all those necessary components have to be reapplied to the restored or rebuilt database. Then record the current location of all data and log files for the system databases. Rebuilding the system databases installs all system databases to their original location. If you have moved system database or log files to a different location, you must also move the files again. So it's like in a development perspective, it's like retrofitting um, the the database. All right, that's it for my report. Classmates, thanks for listening. And Doc Melo, salamat po.
Thank you po.
Okay, thank you very much to summarize the discussion of Madam. Okay, so actually in
Madam
memory
talaga.
databases, we have different challenges and opportunities. No? Specifically, for example, parallelism. Okay, so there are three levels of parallelism. Data label, shared memory scale, at saka yung share nating scale out parallelism. Then another thing is the concurrency control. So an efficient concurrency control protocol is necessary and important in order to ensure atomicity and isolation properties and not to offset the benefit derived from parallelism. Another thing, of course, is communication. No? Network communication is incurred for a variety of critical operations. So data replication for fault tolerance, information exchange for coordination, data transmission for data sharing or load balancing, and so on. We need to take note that the limited size of main memory of a single server in contrast to a big volume of data uh, exacerbates the network communication requirement. But however, no, the data access latency gap between main memory and network is huge, making communication efficiency important to the overall performance. Another challenge and opportunities for database is the storage. So even though in-memory database is stored all the data in the main memory, the data should also be persisted to non-volatile storage for durability and fault tolerance. So actually in traditional disk-based databases, this is achieved by logging each data update to a disk resident write ahead log. So logging to disk, no, however, is prohibitively expensive, no, in the context of in-memory databases due to the extremely slow disk access in contrast to the fast memory access. When it comes to software and hardware solutions, of course, on the software level, we can impose different computation models or techniques to realize parallelism of different granularities like fine grain, coarse grain, and embarrassing parallelism. Multi-threaded programs are a common case that utilize the multi-core architecture to scale up, while distributed computing takes advantage of the resource from hundreds of thousands of servers to scale out the computing storage capability. Another is concurrency control. So I don't know if you are familiar because following the canonical categorization in concurrency control protocol can either be lock-based or timestamp-based from the software perspective because a significant amount, no, such as very lightweight locking, or lock-based approaches, and some protocols. Okay? Then another thing, of course, when it comes to communication, so to improve the network performance, there are mainly two main approaches for communication: minimizing and improving the communication efficiency. So when we say minimizing, that is data locality. No? Data locality is the key to minimizing communication overhead. With good data locality, there will be least frequently access to remote data. And this can be achieved by a good partitioning algorithm. or an efficient query routing mechanism to push computation close to the data. The data locality can only be considered from the software perspectives since the strategy is usually application specific. Now, for improving the communication efficiency, from a software perspective, again, the network communication efficiency can be improved by the objects, okay, coalescing, or what we call batch communication. So we have kernel bypass networking, we have data plane operating system, and other techniques. Okay, I don't know if you are also remember the RDMA, no, Boston networking performance from the hardware perspective naman. Okay? Then again, storage, no, to alleviate durability overhead for in-memory databases. Okay? So we have used command logging. Okay? Then the potential problems with hardware solution, the challenges faced by in-memory database can be addressed from both software and hardware perspective. Again, software solutions are constrained by the underlying software stack and increasingly hitting the performance bottleneck, while hardware solutions can boost the performance from the lowest underlying layers, which usually does not introduce much overhead. That is the transistors and the circuits. And of course, we need also to consider the integrated software and hardware design for a memory databases. Of course, the challenges of in-memory databases and their solutions from both in hardware and software perspective, while hardware solutions are known for its efficiency with less overhead, and they do not always outperform software solution. So in order to fully exploit the potential of in-memory system, we believe that a combined hardware-software solution is needed. There are a lot more that our community can bring to the table. So I think that's it for Miss Nipomuceno discussion.